Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Dean Tribble. I was introduced a couple days ago to many of you as a judge, though I did kind of abbreviate, so I'll give a little more background. I worked on the first production smart contract back in 1989 and have been doing large-scale distributed systems and payments instruments for literally decades, along with several of my co-founders. And so we've been working in this space for a very long time. And I wanted to provide a tiny bit of background, and then I'm going to dive into IST. So the important thing that, with respect to a lot of what you're building is, what is a smart contract? We're getting a little echo in case that. A smart contract is software that's enforcing the terms of a contract-like arrangement, generally among third parties, right? So it's not just autonomous software. It's not software running on a blockchain. The concept of smart contracts predates blockchain, and it's about software enabling cooperation, generally among strangers, I mean, and among friends as well, but enabling more richer cooperation across the network. And so, you know, eBay, PayPal, Venmo, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, all of those were trillion-dollar market cap worth of smart contracts. You know, and then blockchain comes along and enables us to make all of that work in a much more permissionless, much more high-integrity execution context. So I just wanted to get that out there so that, you know, whether it's Bitcoin or the software that you're making, it's software to enable and enforce terms of cooperation between multiple parties. And that's what, that is a new and novel way that software and computers support human interaction and cooperation. Okay, so Agoric is, as I mentioned before, a foundation to enable building those in JavaScript so that the 15 million developers out there that know JavaScript, and whether they're working in fintech or games or, you know, band sites or what have you, they too will be able to build smart contracts that can interoperate with all the stuff that is in Cosmos and the rest of the cryptoverse. And so we're building a framework to make that easy, to make it easy the way those large numbers of programmers are used to being able to rapidly put together software. And, you know, we see that we've already got some, you know, tools for rapid software development that you all have been using this weekend. This is for the next generation and for the next layer of developers out there. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about mostly, though, is the first use case, if you will, the first set of smart contracts that are building on Agoric. Agoric will be rolling out with permissionless smart contracts in JavaScript, but we'll start by rolling out the ones that we've been building to enable an economy running in, you know, running in this environment that all these programmers will be able to access, and that's a stable token for the Interchain ecosystem. This is, you know, stablecoin, dollar peg, parity thing. What is it? Right? So it is a over-collateralized stablecoin like MakerDAO, not an algorithmic stable token like, you know, like ones that are no longer available to you in the Cosmos ecosystem. And so it is thus strongly backed by crypto collateral available over IBC. That's one of the unique things about the Cosmos environment is there's collateral on other chains. We'll be able to bring it over, use it as the collateral that backs a stable token that's minted against it. And we'll talk more about that. So it's native to the Interchain, which means it's usable in this, you know, $10 billion plus connected ecosystem of all the chains that already are running and all the ones that you all are going to launch in the future. And because it's built in Agoric, and what Agoric is built for is it's extensible and evolvable so it can keep up with the changing dynamics of the market and the changing opportunities to provide higher solvency, higher assurance, lower capitalization, and so forth. So, okay. And, you know, before I go very far into it, why do we care? One of the things that's really important about stable tokens is they enable commerce, right? You know, the ecosystems that we see in many places, originally Ethereum, you know, where you had assets and you could trade them, but it was a lot like barter, right? You had to think about each of these assets and how are they valued with respect to each other, and it's very complicated to determine and arrange for interesting economic activity between each other. You could do simple swaps, but doing long-term asset trades or mortgages or lending against these things, they didn't have the smooth ability to price all of these different contracts because they were in tokens that were unrelated to each other. And when stable tokens came out, when DAI came out, and when USDC came out, all of these things that were dollar pegged, now suddenly you could do the same thing the worldwide economy did ages ago and move from a barter economy to a currency economy. And it makes it work much more smoothly, and it is a critical element that led to DeFi summer, that led to the last round of growth of cryptographic activity, or crypto economy activity. So we need the same thing in the interchain world to enable the next round of growth of cross-chain economics, of cross-chain finance, and of cross-chain applications that are all in terms of something of value in terms of money, whether it's trading NFTs or buying tickets or any of those kinds of things. You got to have a currency to act as the grease to make that economy work. Okay, so IST is built using the framework of Agoric, and so it comprises several smart contracts or components of smart contracts that all work together and plug together. So the list is here. The Vault system is a MakerDAO-like CDP, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. There are contracts for doing liquidation that are reusable. There's a native AMM on the platform. There's a Parity stability module, so you can take a existing reference coin like USDC and trade it into IST. There's the reserve for providing a backing reserve to cover shortfalls, and finally there's some integration for the Agoric chain itself, and we'll talk some about each of those. Okay, so vaults. This is where the core value, most of the IST will be minted for the initial deployment of the system, and this is like the vaults from MakerDAO. Where you bring a collateral, you bring a bunch of ATOM, typically, is what we expect, but you bring collateral over, you lock it up, so you lock up $200 worth of collateral, and you mint $100 worth of IST against it. And the value of the collateral will go up and down as the market changes, but as long as it's more than $100, the IST system, the vault system, is solvent. Once the collateral value starts falling, where these are volatile assets, that happens. Once it falls below a threshold called the liquidation threshold, at that point the system gets to automatically sell it. It gets to liquidate it to recover funds to pay for the IST that you minted against it, the IST that some people would view it as borrowed against it, right? And so that means that now, and that IST gets paid back and burned, and so now everything's square. The system is solvent. You add collateral, and this works. One of the ways I characterize the US dollar is it is a collateral-backed stablecoin where the assets are primarily real estate. They have some value. I get a $200,000 house. I borrow $100,000 against it. The house values go up and down. If it falls, the bank takes the house and sells it. Well, no one's living inside of my ATOM deposit, so I don't have to worry about those kinds of things. But the mechanic is well established, not just on blockchain, but historically in large-scale economies. And that's why even with this recent downturn, once all the mechanisms are working, all of these, these CDP-style stablecoins, they work just fine, right? MakerDAO, Celo, all these others, right? Okay. So the key thing is because of IBC, we get to use Cosmos assets as collateral. So this is why it's called the stable token, IST. It's because it's not just a stable token for us. It's really a stable token to be able to be used across a wide variety of chains that are all connected with IBC. So some of the key elements is for each of these collateral types, whether it's ATOM, which has got a long history and a good view of how volatile it is, or something that's much more recent like Juno, or some new zone that isn't out yet, all of those can potentially participate depending on what the community chooses, but the parameters, the economic parameters will be different based on the volatility of those assets, right? Real estate doesn't go up and down that fast, so if you had tokenized real estate, that'd be great, right? ATOM goes up and down depending on the market. Other assets, USDC doesn't go up and down very much at all. And so depending on all these different assets, they will get different required collateralization ratios, different fees, different liquidation thresholds, all those kinds of things. And a particular control that allows us to include all these very different collateral types is debt limits. right? So ATOM, we know there's billions of dollars there. We know that there's a lot of people. There's a long-term value there. There's a community in which you can easily sell it, and so that can have a very high depth limit. But some token that everyone is really interested in, but is relatively new on the scene, that'll require more collateralization, and the amount that the overall system is willing to mint as an ecosystem in order to make sure that IST is good and solid for everybody might be more limited than what you'd be willing to mint, allow people to mint IST against for something like ATOM, right? And that allows us to have, new assets come in, grow in robustness, grow in economic health, and become more and more of an underpinning of the stable token that we're using across the Interchain ecosystem. Okay. So AMM, so another crucial contract in here is an AMM. This includes a fairly simple AMM, but where the base, it's a Uniswap V1 style, where it's every asset against a base token type, but where the token type here is IST. And the role of this AMM is not to compete with osmosis or try to grab market share or what have you. The role of this AMM is to be where a bunch of liquidity exists for liquidations of the vaults, right? Now, it will also be useful and valuable for local economy once there's local economy growing on the Agoric platform. But as part of the IST system, what happens is when vaults get liquidated, instead of having to post an external auction like many of the existing CDP-style stablecoins and have people off-chain bid for the assets. If ATOM value fell below a threshold, or someone was borrowing as much as they possibly could, and then ATOM value fell by 1 penny, suddenly they're going to get liquidated because they were riding the edge of that market value, right? So when that happens, instead of the system going, okay, I've got some ATOM to sell, right? Instead, the liquidation mechanism can take those atoms, turn around and automatically sell them asynchronously using our contract infrastructure, automatically sell them on the local AMM. And then liquidity providers that want to come in and be in a position to get cheap ATOM because it's getting liquidated and so it's going to be sold at a discount, they can come in and just be prepared to buy it off the AMM. And they can have automated mechanisms and contracts to be able to buy it off the local AMM. And what that means is the vault system can ensure its solvency quickly, right, in an automated fashion without waiting for off-chain channels that might get compromised along the way. So it makes it for a very efficient and robust liquidation mechanism. Okay? Then the next element of this overall set of contracts that work together is the Parity stability module. So we see these systems like MakerDAO, it has the ability to, when it has the ability to take USDC, bring it over, convert to DAI, and it sloshes back and forth depending on whether people are long on assets where they, bring ATOM, borrow against it, or mint stable token against it, or whether they're selling it and now people with USDC want to go and pick up the ATOM, right? The mechanics here are, okay. So when liquidation is happening, the fundamental thing that keeps IST with parity to $1 is how efficiently arbitrageurs can come in and buy and sell the assets that underpin the IST value for $1, right? So we've got a price that comes in and says, ATOM is $10 now, and people borrowed it when it was $11. ATOM is $10. I've got people that will now buy up the ATOM that's for sale at a discount. That will then drive the IST price to $1. There's these mechanisms so that as if the IST price strays from $1 to $1.01, people want to buy IST and sell their IST that should be worth $1 to the people that are willing to pay $1.01. And when the price then goes back to $1, they can buy it up and pay off their debt. Right? This is how arbitrageurs help keep the price of IST at near $1. Is that when it goes above $1, they have reason to sell the IST that they have. When it goes below the $1, they buy the IST, and there are incentives there are incentives in the system to encourage people to do that. Providing a mechanism so that they can bring in USDC, convert it to IST in order to participate in that arbitrage makes it very easy for the system to grow quickly as there are lots of people out there that have USDC in their account. So market makers are in an easy position to come in and help stabilize this token for us, to help participate in the economy of stabilizing IST so that we can use it across a broad range of economic applications. And I apologize for the confusing description. I'll need to come up with a nice diagram for how that arbitrage mechanism works to help drive stability of the IST stable token. But the fundamental thing is when it goes above $1, people have reason to sell it. When it goes below $1, people have reason to buy it. And having this nice reference USDC asset there makes it very easy to tie into all of the rest of the crypto ecosystem's pricing of Atom or pricing of Osmo or what have you, because if I can, on one venue, I can take Atom, sell it for a certain price in USDC, bring it over to the Agoric chain and convert it to IST and buy stuff. All of that helps these different systems over IBC equilibrate to the same price for Atom on multiple systems, and that lets all of these dollar prices stabilize with respect to each other. So, all right, I dove a little too far into that. I'll go into the second or the third-ish mechanism for getting IST. And these are ways that one gets IST. You bring Atom or Osmo or what have you as collateral, you bring USDC and you get IST, or there is a native element if you're on the Agoric chain where the Agoric staking token is billed, BLD, where people that are supporting and operating this system on which IST runs, those people can get a small amount of IST from their staked build. And this is one of those things where some people look at it and go, wait, is this sketchy? Is this a problem? Is this one of those algorithmic things? Like, no, no, no. There's no mechanism by which this causes new build to be minted, right? There's no mechanism by which this causes unreasonable amounts of IST to be minted. The fundamental thing here of why we do this is we don't want build, which is the staking token for the infrastructure on which this operates. We don't want people to have reason to not stake with it. And we don't want people with staked positions to over-collateral, you borrow too much against it and suddenly they get slashed, and now this staked token, this staked build that is helping secure the system is suddenly now at loose ends. That's bad. That means you're competing with your economic value and with the security and stability of the system. So instead, staked build holders, that's the staking token for the Agoric chain, they can borrow a small amount, they can mint a small amount of IST against the build token so that they can use it to pay for fees on chain, or they can use it to buy up liquidations or what have you. But this is by far a small percentage compared to the IST that is minted against the interchain assets that come across. Right? This is where all of the elements, all of the extensible elements as we grow the mechanisms providing IST, they're all controlled by parameters like debt limits to ensure that a certain new asset type or new mechanism can't put the overall safety and security and solvency of the IST stable token at risk. That we can have high assurance that the stable token system is robust while still enabling growing new entrants in the system, new mechanisms, and new facilities to make it easier to get and use IST. And so this is an example of one of those where a small portion of it that is well backed by reserve enables people that are on chain with build to be able to use and participate in IST locally. Okay. So that point about enabling extensibility, we know a lot about stable tokens. We've been working on the overall architecture of this for over a year now because it's critical for the Agoric system. But it's based on ideas that people have been working on in blockchain for longer than that, and outside of blockchain for even longer. But we also know that the world continues to change, and there continues to be interesting innovations that we don't want to lock in something and then be stuck there. We want a system that can evolve in a healthy fashion. And that's sort of a key differentiator of the Agoric platform is it's designed around composable extensibility, adding new components, evolving existing components, controlled by governance and that sort of thing. So as new techniques for high assurance, stable token mechanisms like delta neutral is if you read about that, that's a plausibly very cool way to be able to mint some amount of stablecoin against, for example, liquid staking elements, or over the interchain to DYDX or SAY network or injector, or any of these mechanisms that have long-term perpetual options. That allows you to have very capital efficient assets for a stable token, but it requires a rich market in these particular derivatives that don't exist yet, right? That we're not building, that eventually will exist on Agoric, perhaps, if someone builds it. They will certainly exist across the interchain on chains that are even now rolling out or that people are working on to build. As those come in, as they grow in solidity and value and economic depth, being able to integrate them in with an appropriate debt limit so that they can help provide more, better, rich mechanisms for getting IST and being able to enable more interchain commerce. That's a huge value to be able to extend the system that way. And that's a big part of the overall architecture of Agoric. So, delta neutral stable token mechanisms, insurance for liquidation so that you've got an atom position and atom falls just enough to make your vault liquidate. You can have insurance that will cover it so you don't end up getting liquidated. AMM, where currently we have got a few unique features, but a very simple AMM. Once it gets enhanced with things like order books, or if some third party out there comes along and here's just a better AMM written in JavaScript that adds these additional features, the system with governance, people can agree, yes, I like that. We all think that will be better. That will make for a better, more stable, richer, more easily tradable stable token. Let's move to that, right? So there's all these mechanisms that are about enabling this system that we're building and we'll be using to improve and evolve into the future. Okay, so an important element that's critical to stablecoin. How does it work, right? People talk about algorithmic stablecoins. Those have these edges where, well, if you get over here, things go to heck in a handbasket, right? And we've seen that happen. The fundamental robustness for a asset-backed CDP-style stable token here, a vault-based stable token, is not that the asset that's backing it is is stable, right? Whether it's Atom or Osmo or whatever it is, or house prices, they can go up and down. It's not that they're not volatile. It's that when the system needs to liquidate a vault, where you had something that was worth 150 and now it's worth 130, and that crosses the threshold, we'd better sell before it falls too far so we can cover the existing debt. When you want to sell that process works efficiently. That process works smoothly. That's the liquidation process. And one of the reasons why, Atom is plausibly, the most important early collateral type is because there's a rich market for Atom. It's available in lots of places. There's a lot of demand for it. Lots of people want it. And so being able to sell it is straightforward. And so that works really well as a collateral type. So liquidation, the elements of it, right? We've got a vault factory that you made the vault. You've got a vault holding, for example, atoms up on the right, right? And then there is an oracle system, which I'll say more about in a minute. There's an oracle system that is reporting prices, aggregated from exchanges, from osmosis, from wherever it is, to come up with what's the current trading price externally in the market for, in this particular case, Atom, right? And in the Agoric infrastructure, that's just another DeFi Lego. Our vault contract just signed up and said, when the price crosses a certain threshold, let me know. It wakes up asynchronously. It's told, hey, the price dropped below a threshold. And so the vault that vault up on the right is handed off to a liquidation contract. And that, a liquidator, right? And the nice thing about the Agoric architecture is that's a separate contract. It's a separate contract. All of these contracts are working with each other asynchronously, so there's no blocking, there's no reentrancy bugs, there's none of that stuff. And what happens is the vault is handed over to liquidation. The liquidation then takes the collateral, sells it either to the local reserve that says, hey, I want this, I want this. If Atom falls below a certain price and is willing to be sold for $8, I'm taking it, right? Just put it in the reserve. We're extending our depth of Atom collateral in the overall reserve in the system. Right? But otherwise, sell it on the AMM locally, right? And that's the mechanism, and the liquidation contract that we have, it doesn't just do that. It actually is looking at the AMM's price versus the Oracle's price, how much it can sell before having a price impact on the local AMM, and is continually monitoring that so that it is rolling out, it is only liquidating a certain amount per block in order to make sure that it's not contributing to a local downward spiral, even though the overall interchain ecosystem is robust and just fine. We don't want to have big dip in price of ATOM on Agoric before arbitrageurs have a chance to correct it by taking some ATOM from Osmosis or Crescent or whatever, bringing it over, selling it on a local AMM and correcting the price. And so what happens is the liquidator is now trickling it out onto the AMM, and arbitrageurs and contracts are going ahead and correcting it back to the overall market price that's visible outside of the Agoric platform. And that allows lots and lots of liquidation of arbitrageurs to help provide stable price information and enable this overall system to do efficient liquidations. Okay, so that's one of the key mechanisms of shortfall protection, right? Shortfall protection is, you know, we had collateral, we had some debt against that, the value of the collateral fell. You want to sell it before it goes below the amount that you borrowed against it, right? It was worth $200, you borrowed $100 against it, it's now dropped in price. You want to make sure it gets sold before it drops below $100, and if it does so, then the system remains robust, and it can handle very large market downturns as long as it's able to liquidate that stuff efficiently. Right? It doesn't matter where the market is, as long as there's, you know, somewhere along the way at some price, people will buy that collateral, and as long as you sell it quick enough, it'll be fine. Right? So that the protections there are efficient liquidations and over collateralization. Right? It's not that we go, oh my gosh, what used to be $200 in collateral is now worth $100. We better sell it. It's what used to be $200 in collateral is now worth $120. Let's sell it and make sure we can get $100. Right? And all the change we'll give back to the owner, but we just need to make sure that we cover the debt that they currently had. That's the over-collateralization protection. And that's informed by the Oracle price and so forth, as we talked about. But if it dropped too fast, or it was sold too slowly, then you might have $100 in debt for collateral that is now worth 80. And so that's what we mean by shortfall, right? You know, that I was able to sell it, but now I'm $20 short. And so that is covered by the reserve. And there's a separate smart contract that has a reserve that will gradually accumulate fees over time. It will accumulate assets over time as it buys things that are at a low price, as managed by an economic committee that I'll talk about in a minute. And that reserve covers any shortfall so that all the rest of the IST that people have borrowed or minted out there remains robust and has parity to $1. And that's sort of the main mechanism by which all of the system can remain robust, even though the value of the market is going up and down. Right? And there's no interesting coupling between the value of build that's securing this platform and the ability to do these liquidations that keep IST as a stable token. And then finally, of course, worst case, you know, the Agoric platform's job is to make sure this stuff works well and to make sure that it stays solvent. And so worst case, you know, the build holders, the stake build holders, the builder DAO, you know, can either contribute or do new issues to make sure that the reserve is full and covering the existing, you know, the existing network. Okay, so critical to all of that and critical to, you know, to liquidation is the Oracle network, right? Is getting good Oracle prices, and so. You know, and again, this is another one of those pluggable things where, from our perspective, oracles are a. Let me see. I've got like 2 more minutes, I think. Oracles are a critical element of pluggable DeFi infrastructure, right? From my, you know, in JavaScript, I can just say, you know, grab an oracle. When the price of this thing crosses 50, run this JavaScript function, right? It's just a DeFi component, right? So here, but what's backing it up? Where does that information come from? So some of the node operators for Chainlink, they stepped up to build an independent Oracle network for the Agoric platform, where they've, you know, these are people who have been doing it before. They've done it in several infrastructures. They understand what's involved in being able to robustly and continuously provide high quality price information. And so they send price quotes in. There's again, a JavaScript smart contract that aggregates those on a regular basis and provides that price information as a service within the Agoric contract infrastructure. And then, and so, you know, the vault contract says, what's the liquidation price of the most at risk vault? I'm going to wait for the price to cross that threshold. When that happens, I'm going to liquidate some contracts. Right? Okay, so that Oracle network is, built by those chain-link node operators using the large-scale chain-link architecture that is behind many high-quality DeFi applications out there, and we use that for the pricing for our liquidation. Right? Now, what's important is, again, because the system is extensible, which Oracle operator and infrastructure is used is straightforward and is something that can evolve over time. Also, since this is a service that's just available in the JavaScript framework, being able to remote it across IBC to other chains also is going to be straightforward. So all of these little services, each are these individual reusable components that all come together to provide this, this useful economic service, but they can be reused for other applications as well. So then the last thing I'll talk about mechanically is how does this all operate? What makes it work, right? So the Agoric system, currently it's got new issuance of build and the staking token in sort of the typical Cosmos style, but the fundamental architecture is to have all of the rewards for validators and all the rewards for delegators come from the fees driving the IST economy, so that they're on the hook to make sure it stays solvent and they get rewarded for the operation and growth of that. And so that means for each of those contracts, for the AMM, there's a trading fee of 5 basis points, which is fairly typical. Build Boost has a fee. The Parity Stability module has a very small fee because you're going from dollar to dollar valued assets. And then Vault Factory charges interest for the IST that you mint against locked up tokens. And and those fees, some of them go to the IST reward pool, but when it's past a certain amount, right, that's sort of rate limited. When it's past a certain amount, a fraction of it goes into the reserve. So as IST economic activity grows, the reserve to protect its solvency and protect its robustness grows, so that we stay with a stable system for however, in a solvent system, for however much the use of IST grows across the Interchain ecosystem. So very exciting. That's a key element is you really want to make sure that there's lots of people that are interested in making sure that shortfalls do not happen, and mostly that's done around very efficient liquidations. But in order to, we can go into more detail about that. Okay, all of this is managed by governance, of course. There are 2 levels of governance. There's the day-to-day detailed, is it 160% liquidation threshold or 180% liquidation threshold? Is the interest, 1%, 2%, half a percent, what is it, right? Those are administered by an economic committee that is effectively elected by the build stakers, by the builder DAO. So the economic committee controls debt limits to make sure that new things can come in, but they can't put the system at risk. It controls all of these interest rates and fee rates. And it can propose changes like, this delta neutral thing is really working. It would work this way. Here's what its debt limit would be. You should consider adding that to the sources of IST. And then it's up to the higher level builder DAO, the vote of the overall Agoric chain, to elect the economic committee, decide on those improvements, add new collateral types. Do we want to add Osmo? Do we want to add Juno? When do we add Evmos? All those kinds of things, right? Approve upgrades, approve code changes, all those kinds of stuff, that are critical to the actual operation. So changes in software, they're not handled by a random, not a random committee, but a committee of economic experts. They're handled by the operators of the system. Okay? So 2 levels of governance, and one of the key functions of the builder DAO is to elect that economic committee, and we're expecting a governance vote in the near future as we're heading towards launch of what are the exact responsibilities of the economic committee, and then and who are the initial members. And one of the important things is it's not that the economic committee is flipping a coin and going, oh, I think it's 180% this week. What we're actually doing is we're working with Gauntlet. If you're familiar with Tarun Chitra's group, they do iterative economic simulation based on current market data, current levels of collateral and all the different exchanges and that sort of thing, in order to figure out, in order to provide a set of parameters for all of these debts and interests and so forth to inform the, to provide and balance, solvency risk with collateralization ratios and economic efficiency. And so having a set of experts that are continually doing this analysis, they provide, here's a model for this week, And then the economic committee goes, yep, nothing looks wrong there, we'll go ahead and approve it, and that will slightly adjust the changes on chain. So we've got this very responsible processes around the economic administration of the system because it is a currency, right? It is a thing that you want lots and lots of projects to be able to rely on and know that the decentralized operation has a nice, strong trail of assurance of correct parameterization and control. Okay, so wrapping up here, so how can you get involved? Depends where you are, right? If you're a developer, new front ends, right? We've got initial front ends, but that's something that, you know, you're all experts at. You can do better or more targeted front ends for getting IST, getting it from wallets, managing vaults, automating the process of vault management, all those kinds of things. I won't talk about MEV stuff, though we can talk about that elsewhere. But expanding these things, right? We talked about, there's a PSM and there's a liquidation thing. You may have a better liquidation algorithm that is more efficient, more economically sound, or simply liquidates over IBC over to liquidate directly onto Osmosis or Crescent, right? So there's definitely, you know, this is a community effort and we expect to integrate well with lots of other chains. This is a place to be able to go build it. If you're a capital provider, a market maker, an arbitrageur, you know, get prepared for those liquidations. You know, set up to get to understand when the market is changing such that you're in a position to provide liquidity into those liquidations and capture some of that value. If you're bringing up a new chain or a bridge, right, you know, so basically, you know, arrange your system to use IST. If you're going to have a perpetual option system, it's got to reduce into some stable token. You know, you don't want to build another one. What you want to do is use something that everyone else is going to use. So setting up to be able to use IST for that easily is going to be of value. If you're running stable swaps, make sure that this is one of the things available so it's very easy for people to bring, you know, USDC over Axelar and USDC over Thorchain and USDC over wherever it is, which are all these different denoms and IBC, bring them over, convert them through the PSM to one IST and use it on a bunch of different platforms, right? Whatever that mechanism is, there's places where you can extract value here while providing good service and useful service to the rest of the ecosystem. And finally, you know, if you're a fintech developer building some interesting new DeFi, there's lots of ways that can help integrate in and not only provide value for yourself, but provide value to the people that are using IST or that want to underwrite IST, but because you can provide more economically efficient or additional robust mechanisms for people to be able to participate in this ecosystem. So please join the community, come to the Twitter Spaces. We endorse, you know, adopt the mean of IST, right? IST, right? And come to Cosmoverse, where we will have many new things in additional detail, and have gotten through. You know, we've already gotten through security audits. We're going through economic stress tests now. We'll have releases that are heading towards launch in that time frame, and we're very excited for you to then come and talk about, you know, integration with all these other projects that are being built. So, thank you all very much for your time. And you're building. You've seen a lot of what there is existing now in your current stuff. This is something that you'll be building for and being able to use in the future and being able to extend in the future. So we really look forward to all of you developers coming on board. So thank you much.